We have been desperate to talk about the Salt Path controversy, and we were going to wait until Holly was back because we would like to put it on the record in this moment that Ms. Holly Wainwright recommended the Salt Path to our listeners.
I remember what Holly recommended.
I listened, Mia Freedman. I listened, and I wrote in my journal, Holly Wainwright just recommended the Salt Path so that I could bring it up today and say, history will not be kind to Holly Wainwright.
Oh, no.
Because, yes, this is very controversial. We got too impatient though. And so today we want to start from the beginning. And I like that Holly has no right of reply. I like doing it like this.
She's going to reply the minute she gets back. I just know it.
So The Salt Path is a memoir that was published in 2018 and it was written by Raynor Winn and it has since sold more than 2 million copies. That is a lot of copies. In 2024, it was turned into a film and the main characters were Gillian Anderson and Jason Isaacs.
Jason Isaacs from White Lotus.
Yeah. It was marketed as unflinchingly true. It tells a story of how Raynor, who was 55 at the time, and her husband, Moth Winn, lost their home after investing a substantial sum of money in a company owned by a friend that ultimately failed. It was kind of the grey nomad thing, right? But it was also playing into something that impacts a lot of people in their 50s, 60s, 70s of particularly women, of homelessness, where you go, I've worked my whole life and I've ended up at this point where I have nothing but the things in my backpack.
I'd never heard of this book, so I've come to this like a lot of people reading about the controversy without any knowledge of the source text. It sounds like The Salt Path, the book, was a little bit like Cheryl Strayed's memoir Wild.
Yes.
Someone going on, this is why I didn't hear of it, someone going on a long walk in nature.
Yeah.
Not my kind of book or
Exactly.
movie. Very boring.
On top of this, the reason why this book was so impactful is that Moth had been diagnosed with a rare neurodegenerative disease.
What kind of a name is Moth?
Well, I think it comes from, because his name is Tim, so Tim Moth. I've never heard Moth.
Timothy.
Yeah, as a little.
So instead of the nickname being Tim, it's Moth.
Like Moth Chalamet.
Yes, that's quite
exactly
a nice little endearing pet name. They both decided they were going to walk along the southwest coast path in southwest England. Look, that book
sounds so horrendous.
Oh, people love.
Yeah, no, they do.
It's like a self-help kind of situation.
Boomers going on long
right?
walks. Yep, I get it. I mean, I loved Eat, Pray, Love, so it's not
it's like
dissimilar.
Eat, Pray, Love, except a couple.
Yeah.
And
on a long walk.
He's got this illness, and the idea is as well that, you know, he's been given certain things to expect from this illness, and the walking really helped, and that was part of the story.
My understanding is that the illness, the diagnosis is usually pretty terminal and not something that you can walk off.
No, so you often have a life expectancy of about 6 to 8 years.
Okay.
Now, this is all well and good, except according to an article in The Observer, which was published earlier this month, they were never homeless. They did lose one home, but that was a result of embezzling the equivalent of about 85,000 Australian dollars. There are also questions about Moth's illness, and that's not even his real name, and Raynor is not her real name.
Wait, so he chose the name Moth?
Well, their real names are Sally and Tim. Sally and Tim Walker.
That doesn't have the same ring
It
to
doesn't.
it.
I liked the Raynor and the Moth. And look, that I can kind of forgive. In a memoir, if you want to have a kind of pen name situation, fine. It's probably the other stuff that isn't so forgivable.
All right, be honest. Has anyone ever quietly typed how to poach an egg for the 10th time, or is that just me? But maybe it's not so silly when you consider what some of the most searched for questions are. How many weeks in a year is in the top 10? Where am I? Is a personal fave. Always good to know where you are. Look, you might know a lot, but that doesn't automatically mean you'll know exactly what third-party insurance is too, for example. See, here's the thing. There's this expectation that we're all just born knowing how to navigate mortgages, taxes, and insurance, when really most of us are just figuring it out as we go. And that's exactly why Yui is such a breath of fresh air. When you call them, there's no such thing as a silly question. They actually get that insurance can feel complicated, and they make it their job to keep things clear and straightforward. They talk to you like a real person. No jargon, no judgment. Just honest answers and a genuine conversation about what you need. So if you've gotten questions, big, small, or should I already know this, Yui is there to help you feel confident, not confused. Insurance that's a bit more U-shaped, Yui, you insured.
Look, Sally stole that substantial sum of money while working as a bookkeeper in the mid-2000s, but they settled the dispute privately. The details get really weedy here, but long story short, debt collectors took their home. And Sally Walker has written a very long blog post where she's confirmed this.
So interestingly, one reason could be for changing your name is that people can't then Google you and find things out about you.
Yeah. Also, the reason they weren't ever really homeless is because they did have a property technically in France that they still owned throughout all of this. The Observer then cast doubts on Walker's illness. They interviewed multiple medical experts who said that, you know, the average life expectancy is 6 to 8 years. And I think it's now 18 years later, Tim Walker is still alive. What has Raynor Winn said? So she's written this big blog post and she says that the house in France was uninhabitable. It was just like basically stones, like you couldn't live there and they couldn't sell it. Actually looks like she might be telling the truth about that, right? She has also shared documents that seem to confirm her husband's diagnosis, although some say you were a little bit vague on the details, and a lot of people with this specific illness, this is the issue with writing about health, is that it became sort of prescriptive to them and they had this hope that maybe if I just did a long walk, then I too could improve a lot of my symptoms.
It's giving Belle Gibson.
Yes. So there's a lot to unpack here. Mia, what kind of responsibility do you think the publisher has here to fact check?
I want to jump past the publisher and talk about the reader first, right? Because a lot of people who read this book, who loved this book, have said, I'm really, really upset. We have a similar thing happen many years ago with an author called James Frey who wrote a memoir called A Million Little Pieces. He was on Oprah's book club. It then turned out that his memoir, most of it, or I think all of it, wasn't true. That was a huge controversy. We've had these before. Helen Demidenko, a long time ago, I think she said she was Yugoslavian, but she was just an Australian who was not Yugoslavian, and that was not her name. Her name was Helen Darville. So my question about when you read something that you think is memoir, because I read A Million Little Pieces, I thought it was great. When I found out that a lot of it wasn't true, did I care? Well, no, because we have something called fiction, and I mean, I understand that but is the storytelling, is it not just as good?
Oh, it's totally different.
Really?
It's an element of absolute manipulation, and I think that what's an important point to make is that nonfiction is easier to sell. It's easier to market. The reason it's easier to market, I was told this, I've written a nonfiction book and a fiction book. Nonfiction, people want to interview you because you've got a story to tell.
Because it's your real story.
How many fiction writers, unless they're Leanne Moriarty, do you actually hear? It's really hard to get your fiction book in front of people's eyes. So
because it's like, tell me about this made-up story. It's like, okay.
So if you say this is nonfiction, this is a true story, the investment of a reader, and I think that a book is very different to any other type of media because of how long you spend with those people, the details that you absorb, the hope, the connections that you make, and then to find out that isn't true feels like such an enormous
bait and switch
betrayal. And I'm so surprised that I was listening to a podcast about this where they were saying that the way the contract works is that the publisher has Raynor sign something where Raynor says this is all true. Basically, the onus is on the author. And Raynor got a very small book advance for this. I think it was maybe like £10,000, £20,000, since she's made millions and millions of dollars off royalties. But this keeps happening, it seems, because legally I don't think that the onus is on the publisher. I think it's on the writer.
Well, I've written a couple of memoirs. I can't remember if I signed anything. I mean, they're always worried about anything legal. So anything where you talk about other people or make claims about other people.
But it's not like they would have sat down with your mum and dad and gone, hey, this story that Mia told about being 4, was that true?
No, and they don't ask for medical records.
No.
Because that would be intrusive. Although in the case of something like Belle Gibson, there was a huge amount of backlash and criticism of the publisher, which I think was valid because if you know, in my memoir I wrote about having a miscarriage, I wrote about anxiety, I wrote about various things, but I didn't write about curing myself of a particular illness.
I think that's where the difference comes in because this book, although it's a memoir, like labeled as a memoir, it's more like a self-help kind of book. Like that book would have had exactly what you said, so many readers in like a chokehold of going, this is the book that is going to help me through my next stage. And I remember like something so different, but I know the exact sense of betrayal because my favorite movie for the longest time was The Blind Side.
Yeah.
And that was based on a true story. Sandra Bullock won Academy Awards for it. It was a massive movie.
What was it about again?
It was about this family, this really successful rich family in Memphis who adopted a black kid and took them into his family, and he became this massive football star. And The Blind Side was about how he became huge. He went into college and they funded all of that, and he was just making a lot of money.
It was this beautiful success story. And it was a bit white savior, but Hollywood.
So which bit wasn't true and how did it come out?
So then after that, we found out that the child that the movie was about, Michael Orr, was suing the Toohey family. That was Sandra Bullock. Was suing that family, saying that he actually wasn't adopted. He was under conservatorship. And the family was taking all the money that he was making and taking all the money that the movie was made from Hollywood. And it was one of those situations that was so horrible. And then he said a lot of the stuff that happened in the movie was not true. Like he could actually read and write and he was well educated.
So he felt completely exploited and misrepresented.
These huge racial stereotypes are happening. And it just was one of those things where as someone who was so invested in that film, I was just digging and digging and digging to see if this could be unproven, because it was just something that really, I watched it when I was really young and I just wanted it to be true so badly.
I read a book when I was a teenager called Forbidden Love, and it was
Norma
Khoury, and it was about her growing up in Jordan and her best friend Dahlia, who fell in love with like a Christian soldier and was ultimately died by an honor killing that her father her father was responsible for. And she wrote...
Right, she told the story of her best friend who was killed.
Yes, and then she moved to the US and it was this phenomenon, this book, right? And then it was actually Australian journalists, Malcolm Knox and I think Caroline Overington was really involved in the reporting, where they went... There was something like 72 factual inaccuracies, really basic stuff like the border of Jordan was wrong, the banknotes were wrong, like all of these kind of, and they were like, this is really, really strange. And then people within Jordan started saying, this is not a big country we would have heard. This is like a horrific thing to happen we would have heard.
Wasn't made up.
And so they dig and they dig and they dig. Turns out this woman never existed. Like Norma Khoury hadn't even been in Jordan at that time. There's a brilliant documentary called Forbidden Lies that Caroline Overington is in that basically it had to be pulled from shelves. Like the book was totally fictional. And the reason why that was so bad was because it came out in 2003. That is 2 years after September 11. The anti-Muslim sentiment, the Islamophobia that was so prevalent at the time. People were so invested in having this vision of kind of the oppressed Muslim woman. And to write this, to have me so emotionally invested in that book and go, this is such a tragedy, look at how these cultures work. It just was a totally fictional story.
I know it's hard to unscramble how you feel about something, but had that been categorized as fiction, you're saying it wouldn't have sold as well.
No.
But would you have enjoyed reading it as much? Or there's something, and you for The Blind Side, is there something about knowing that it's true that enhances your enjoyment of it?
It totally changes the conversation when you're told it's true.
100%. And even with that book, it's also because those could be true stories. Like honor killings do happen. So I feel like making up a fake story about that and then making so much money and moving to the US when it actually is happening in the world is just another step way too far.
It's totally exploiting a culture that you actually have no right to write about. And what's interesting too is the James Frey example, and I believe in this example, there's a big question mark about what happens to the money.
Yes.
Because James Frey, I'm pretty sure he's still a pretty rich dude. And a lot of the readers, because this is in the US, readers sued him. Like individual readers were like, I want to be compensated.
I think the publishers often allow people to
refunds.
Get refunds. But would you get a refund?
Well, what's funny is you might have a few refunds. Do you know how many people have bought The Salt Path in the last few weeks? Like the book scan numbers would have just skyrocketed.
And watched the movie.
Yeah. So In terms of the money,
there was an interview with Gillian Anderson. This is before all this came out. And people are now going back and looking. When she was promoting the movie, someone said, did you meet Raynor? How did you find her? And Gillian Anderson said, I found her guarded.
That's very telling.
Which was kind of cryptic.
You know who I want to hear from? Jason Isaacs. Because from White Lotus, we all know he's a messy
random.
bitch.
Yeah, he's
He
a messy
famously
bitch.
said
He
friendships are made, friendships are lost.
the dad on White Lotus with his prosthetic penis.
Come
has
on,
things to
fictional
say.
moth. What do you think? Tell us your opinion.